I wanted to say to you tonight is how deeply saddened I am about the outcome on Tuesday. It's not what anyone hoped for. I understand it's my responsibility, and I want to apologize to everyone about what happened.
All right, that was Oakland Mayor Jean Quan, who attempted to speak to the crowd outside of Occupy Oakland late last night. A lot going on there. Joining us now, we're lucky to have Democratic Congresswoman from California, former chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus and former co-chair of the Progressive Caucus, Representative Barbara Lee. Good to have you on the show.
Glad to be with you this morning.
How do we characterize what's going on in Oakland? And I guess I want your thoughts on the Occupy movement, if you would call it a movement.
Sure. It is a movement. And I, from day one, have fully supported the Occupy movement. I think it's about time that people hit the streets and really raise the concerns of 99% of the American people. Income inequality, the wealth gap, poverty rates are growing. Young people don't have much hope in terms of getting into college and getting out of college without huge debt. There's so many issues that the 99ers are raising.
Those realities are clear. We've been talking about them every day, but how do they connect with the debate that's going on in Washington? And is the debate that's going on in Washington, whether it be the super committee trying to get to a deal or between Obama and the Republicans, is it connecting with what these people are angry about?
I hope it does connect, and it should connect, because the deficit committee and the budget debates that we're in, and I serve on the appropriations committee, which in many ways is the epicenter of what is going to take place. This is what's driving these decisions, the policy priorities of our country. Do we, for example, want to continue to invest in waging wars, or do we want to really invest in schools and education? And so these policy debates and budget cuts, are we going to make cuts that are going to affect the poor even more, and allow the middle income to fall into poverty?
I want to go back to the unfortunate thing that happened in Oakland, and something I said last week that created a lot of stir. My tremendous concern is what I feel is inevitable, and I made a reference back to Kent State that say we are a society of images. And I was afraid, and am afraid, the thing that's going to take this movement to the next level is we are just waiting for violence when you have so much passion on both sides. And instead of waiting for that moment, what we can do, it's inevitable. And whether we see this in Oakland, and the next thing, do we have to wait for someone to die? And that's what scares me. And that image, just like we stare at that Kent State image, that's what sticks with us. And that's what's going to move it to the next level. And that's what's frightening. And why are we waiting for that to happen? Because it's going to happen.
Well, I was terrified at what took place and watching what took place in Oakland, and expressed my outrage and my real concern for what is taking place. The protesters are not causing this violence. These are peaceful protesters who have a right to petition their government.
So what happened in Oakland? The police say they were provoked.
I believe, yes, Joe, but I believe also when you look at what took place, the reaction was not appropriate to what was taking place.
Yeah, great
overreacted, and it was really
human beings are going to do it, and it could come from the other side. Human beings.
But these are peaceful protesters. This is a non-violent movement.
So have you reached out to the chief of police in your hometown to ask him what the hell happened?
I have talked to the mayor.
Talked to the mayor?
I talked to the mayor, and I expressed my outrage, and I told her that I was going to call for an independent investigation.
What did the mayor tell you?
And I think you just saw her response. She, first of all, was quite upset, dismayed. Naturally, she supports nonviolent protesters.
You're a supporter of hers.
Yes, I support the mayor, but let me just say, in this instance, this was an overreaction. This should not have happened. She apologized, but I am just saying to everyone that this protest movement, the Occupy movement, should be supported.
Right. So who's the chief of police in Oakland?
Well, the chief of police is Chief Jordan. We have gone through, in the last month, a transition between one police chief and another police chief.
Is there a lack of discipline in the Oakland Police Department?
Well, we've got to have this investigation, and that's why
But do you think, though, because I understand there have been some problems in Oakland before.
There's been a history of problems in Oakland as it relates to police brutality.
Is there right now a discipline problem in the Oakland police force?
Well, when you look at what has taken place over the last few years and just very recently, there's something wrong. There's a big problem, and we need an outside investigation.
You're shining a light in the wrong place.
We have an outside investigation.
Get the Oakland Police Department. Obviously, they didn't act right. It's not about the Oakland Police Department. When you have this level of passion on both sides, we don't have to just say, oh, let's clean up the Oakland Police Department. We have to do something about this movement.
I mean, the fact of the matter is,
it's going to happen again.
The fact of the matter is, New York faced a similar confrontation a week ago, and you had police officials and you had the mayor say, okay, you know what, we're not going to clear out the park now. They have had an open line of communication there. Listen, leadership. This is when you find out who a good leader is, who a good police chief is, who a good mayor is.
Yes.
And the fact is, New York was confronted with challenges, and they handled it well.
Maybe they won't the next time. Maybe
whereas
they won't the next
in
time.
Oakland, there has been a history of these problems.
There's been a total history of these problems, and this was handled horribly. And in fact, these protesters were peaceful. They want to stay there,
okay.
and they're going to stay there.
Are we, this is a live look, by the way, of protesters getting ready for another day in New York City. Are we clear, though, that things were being thrown? I just would like to provide some balance in light of the fact that we do need to wait for an investigation to be complete before we know what really happened there.
That protesters were throwing objects at police?
That the protesters were throwing objects at police. Is that clear?
Those are the allegations, and even if they were, the response was excessive, and that's why I think we need not only an internal investigation, but we need an outside investigation.
Yeah, well,
and I'm going to call for one. I've talked to the mayor. I told the mayor that's what we need.
I don't want to get redundant, and please just...
Too late.
No, okay, let me get extra redundant then. This is the equivalent of like, the problem is not this incident. The problem is that we're not dealing with the issue behind the incident, and we're going to wait for the next incident, which will be much more tragic.
They're not mutually exclusive.
They're not, but I mean, the issue is it's an inevitability, and we're just waiting for it to happen before we act at the next step.
I think the Congresswoman's point, which is well taken, is it could be as a largely nonviolent movement.
Of course it is.
And you have to encourage it. I wanted to ask you, Congresswoman, do you have confidence in the leadership of the Occupy movement? Is there a leadership of the Occupy movement?
Let me say, the Occupy movement is taking off. This is a movement of people. I don't believe right now it needs leadership. I don't believe it needs an agenda. As a member of the Progressive Caucus, we met with some of the Occupy Washington movement, and several of us went down to just kind of do some things they asked us to do. And I am pleased that it does not have the type of agenda we're so accustomed of, because this is a movement that is building. It's broad-based, and it's speaking to the inequality in our country, which needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed quickly, because this is systemic, and as this deficit committee continues to do its work, these are the issues that the deficit committee needs to address in terms of inequality, in terms of the 1%, in terms of the gouging of the consumer, in terms of the financial industries. And so the deficit committee needs to listen very clearly to what they're saying. That's how the movement gets
I would
brought.
agree, and I would just say that this movement is tapping into the desperation and hopelessness in this country, and that could be an incredibly dangerous mix.
Correct.
Hey, Mika, before we leave, could we have Donnie say the same thing again?
Okay.
Because nobody, you know what, guys?
Go ahead, Donnie.
You know what? I don't like you today. I don't like you today. I just don't like you.
Yeah, that's fine with me. As long as a Congresswoman likes me, I'm good.
Can I just say, people are sick and tired of the status quo, and that's what we're seeing. And we have to change the status quo. They're sick and tired, and we've got to change it.
So, Congresswoman, do you like me? Do you really, really like me?
Okay, do I like you, Joe? Yes, I like you, Joe. I like you,
I'm going to put you on.
I played with Donnie.
So what is this? What is that?
Congresswoman, thank you so much. It's great for you to be here.
with both of you, and Mika, too. She'd have to be there.
Morning Joe is brought